Imagine being thousands of feet in the air, trapped inside a plane where every second counts, and instead of pulling together, one passenger decides her window seat is the most important thing in the world. That's exactly what happened on this unforgettable flight. And trust me, it's a story you'll never forget. The flight began like any other. Passengers shuffled into the cabin, overhead bins slammed shut, and the faint smell of airplane coffee lingered in the air. Among the passengers was Mrs. Elellanar, a frail elderly woman traveling alone to visit her daughter. She moved slowly, gripping her small handbag, and a kind flight attendant helped her into her seat near the aisle. She looked exhausted but grateful, giving a warm smile to those nearby. Then there was Karen. You could spot her from a mile away, the loud sighs, the impatient tapping of her nails against the armrest, the constant complaints about boarding taking too long. She had secured a window seat, or so she thought. But when she boarded, she found another passenger already sitting there due to a last-minute reassignment. From the very beginning, Karen made it clear she wasn't happy. She leaned over the passenger who now had the window, raising her voice so loudly that half the row turned to look. "This is my seat. I paid for it, and I don't care what anyone says. I'm not moving until I get what I deserve." The flight attendants tried calming her down, explaining that seat swaps sometimes happen due to technical reasons or passenger needs, but Karen wasn't having it. She crossed her arms, glaring at the flight crew as though she was preparing for battle. For the first hour, things remained tense but manageable. Karen sulked, muttering under her breath, occasionally pressing the call button to demand another drink or to complain that the person in front of her reclined their seat too far. And then it happened. About halfway through the flight, Mrs. Elellanar slumped forward in her seat, her hands trembling. The passenger beside her shouted for help, and the entire row erupted in panic. Flight attendants rushed forward, one of them calling out for a doctor on board. The once calm hum of the plane turned into a blur of frantic voices. Passengers leaned in, some offering water, others moving out of the way to make space. The elderly woman's breathing grew shallow, and every second felt heavier than the last. But in the middle of this life-or-death emergency, Karen was still arguing. She wasn't focused on the unconscious woman or the desperate flight crew. No. Karen was still fuming about her window seat. The cabin was in chaos. A flight attendant knelt beside Mrs. Elellanar, trying to revive her with oxygen, while another rushed to the back for the emergency kit. A young man, who happened to be a nurse, jumped from his seat to help, carefully checking her pulse. Passengers leaned into the aisle, whispering, some with hands pressed to their mouths in shock. But instead of silence and concern, one voice cut through louder than the rest. "Karen." "Excuse me," she snapped, standing halfway out of her seat. "I can't even see out of my window because everyone's crowding the aisle. This is ridiculous. I paid for that seat, and now I can't enjoy my flight at all." Every head turned. A stunned hush fell for a moment before it was drowned out by disbelief. Was she really complaining about her window view while an elderly woman fought for her life? The nurse calmly asked the people around to give space, but Karen didn't budge. She leaned forward, waving her hands as if she were the victim. "I don't understand why my comfort should be ruined just because someone didn't take care of themselves before flying. I planned this trip, and I expected to get what I paid for." Gasps rippled through the cabin. A mother clutching her baby shook her head in disgust. A businessman 2 rows back muttered, "Unbelievable." The flight attendants, struggling to stay professional, tried to block her out while they worked. Meanwhile, Mrs. Elellanar's condition was frightening. Her skin had gone pale, and her breathing was shallow. The nurse asked for water and a clear space, urging everyone to stay calm. Passengers cooperated, sliding bags and feet out of the way, trying to make room in the tight aisle. Everyone, that is, except Karen. "This is insane," she barked, pushing her call button again and again. "I'm going to file a complaint with the airline. I didn't pay for this drama. I paid for a relaxing flight with a window seat, and instead, I'm trapped in the middle of this circus. One of the flight attendants turned sharply, her voice low but firm. Ma'am, a passenger's health is more important than your seat. Please sit down and stay quiet. But Karen scoffed, tossing her head back. Oh, of course. Always someone else's emergency. Meanwhile, I'm ignored. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. On one side of the row, passengers united to save a woman's life. And on the other, Karen stewing in self-absorbed outrage. The tension thickened. Whispers spread. People pulled out phones, some recording discreetly, knowing this moment was almost too outrageous to believe. And the worst part? Karen wasn't even close to being done. The air inside the cabin felt heavy, every passenger tense as Mrs. Elellanar lay slumped in her seat, her fate uncertain. The nurse worked steadily, pressing 2 fingers to her wrist, whispering urgent instructions to the flight attendants. Keep the oxygen steady. She needs fluids. We have to keep her stable until we land. But across the aisle, Karen was on her own stage. She raised her voice, not caring that half the plane glared at her. This is unacceptable. I'm stuck here in the worst possible circumstances, and nobody seems to care about my rights as a paying customer. A father holding his teenage daughter finally snapped. Are you kidding me? That woman could die, and you're whining about your seat. Karen shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Don't lecture me. I paid good money. And if the airline can't handle emergencies without ruining my flight, that's their problem, not mine. The murmurs grew into open hostility. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, some whispering words like heartless and selfish. A woman 3 rows ahead turned around and shouted, sit down and shut up already. The cabin, once panicked for the elderly woman, was now united against Karen. But Karen thrived on the attention. She crossed her arms and huffed. Oh, so now I'm the villain because I don't want to stare at someone passing out during my vacation. Please, she probably shouldn't even be flying. Gasps erupted. The nurse froze for half a second, disbelief flashing across his face. Even the flight attendant tending to Mrs. Elellanar whipped her head around. Ma'am, enough, her voice trembled with anger. Karen smirked as though she'd just proven a point. But her little act had consequences. A man 2 seats over, red-faced with fury, pulled out his phone and recorded her openly. Go ahead, Karen. Keep talking. Let the world see how you act while someone's grandmother is fighting to breathe. Her eyes widened briefly, then narrowed. You can't record me without permission, she snapped, swatting her hand in the air. But it was too late. Dozens of passengers were now witnesses, and some were already hitting record. Meanwhile, Mrs. Elellanar stirred faintly, letting out a weak groan. Relief washed through the people around her. The nurse nodded. She's coming around. Just keep it steady. A ripple of hope filled the cabin, but the relief was quickly replaced by shock when Karen leaned forward and muttered, just loud enough for others to hear, great. Maybe now we can get back to my window seat. The plane erupted. The cabin had reached its boiling point. Karen's selfish mutter about her window seat had been the final straw. Passengers who had held back now erupted with anger. A woman in the back yelled, "Are you serious? That could be your mother." Another shouted, "Show some humanity." The tension, once focused on the emergency, had turned into a tidal wave of outrage aimed squarely at Karen. Karen threw up her hands defensively. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for expecting what I paid for. She's fine now, isn't she? You all act like I'm a monster. But the flight attendants had had enough. One of them, her voice sharp as steel, leaned down to Karen's row. Ma'am, you are disrupting this flight and harassing other passengers. If you don't stay silent for the remainder of this trip, you will face consequences the moment we land. Karen's jaw dropped. Consequences for what? Wanting my window seat? The businessman who had been quietly fuming all flight finally spoke up, his voice low but cutting. No. For being the most selfish person on this plane. The entire cabin broke into applause. It wasn't polite clapping. It was loud, deliberate, cathartic, the kind of applause meant to drown Karen out completely. She flushed red, her lips pressed thin, but she had finally run out of words. Meanwhile, Mrs. Elellanar had regained partial consciousness. Her eyes fluttered open, and she whispered weakly, "Thank you. Thank you all." The nurse reassured her softly. "You're okay now, ma'am. We're almost there." A flight attendant dabbed her forehead with a cool cloth, while others nearby offered encouraging smiles. The cabin's energy shifted. Compassion had won out over cruelty. But the story wasn't over. As the plane began its descent, the captain made an announcement. "Due to a medical emergency on board, we'll be met by paramedics upon arrival. We appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation." The word "everyone" hung heavy. Karen sank lower into her seat, realizing she had made herself the most hated person on the plane. When the doors finally opened, paramedics rushed in to help Mrs. Elellanar, carefully escorting her out. Passengers gave her encouraging words and soft applause as she was wheeled down the aisle. Then the unexpected happened. An airline security officer stepped on board and walked directly to Karen. "Ma'am, we've received multiple reports about your behavior during this emergency. We'll need to speak with you off the aircraft." Gasps turned into quiet cheers. Phones rose again, capturing the poetic justice. Karen sputtered, "This is ridiculous." But the officer firmly guided her down the aisle, past rows of glaring eyes, and for the first time all flight, Karen had no audience left. If you think Karen went too far, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories like this.